fair east side. By thy side will stand and always praise thy name. Praise thy name, praise thy name. To ever, yeah, lend a hearts and hands to help increase thy fame. Ooh, Lord, the honor, yeah.
10-441. Conduct a public hearing to consider, discuss, act on an ordinance approving the creation of tax increment reinvestment zone number 1 in McKinney, also known as the Town Center TIRZ, and establishing a board of directors for the reinvestment zone. 10-441. Mr. Spath.
I'm Kevin Spath, the Senior Long Range Planner with the City of McKinney Planning Department. As part of Phase 2 of the Town Center Study Initiative, over the past year, city staff and the consultant team have been evaluating the feasibility of potential fiscal tools, including the creation of a tax increment reinvestment zone, or TIRZ, to encourage long-term economic development and redevelopment in McKinney's Town Center. Over the past 6 months, city staff and the consultant team have been meeting on a monthly basis with the City Council TIRZ Committee, comprised of Mayor Lockmiller and council members Day and Ussery, to review and discuss the ongoing activities associated with creating a TIRZ in McKinney's Town Center, now known as TIRZ number 1. Very briefly, I'd like to reiterate what a TIRZ actually is. It's a long-term economic development tool authorized under Chapter 311 of the Texas Tax Code. It's created to help finance the cost of improvements, such as infrastructure, needed to promote development or redevelopment of a specific area that would otherwise not attract significant private investment. TIRZ may retain new property and sales taxes over a base year value, and under a TIRZ, a property owner pays taxes on the full value of the property, and the participating taxing entities allocate a portion of those taxes into a TIRZ fund based on the added value of the land. The proposed tax increment reinvestment zone number 1 consists of approximately 950 acres, generally within the historic town center of McKinney and along State Highway 5 from U.S. Highway 380 to Spur 399 and the U.S. 75 interchange. As outlined in the preliminary project plan, which was attached in the council packet, TIRZ number 1 will provide support for catalytic infrastructure and projects that support continued revitalization of the historic town center. It will link the town center across State Highway 5 to the proposed future transit-oriented development around the future rail station and provide infrastructure and development support for the TOD. Additionally, it will support street improvements and other critical infrastructure needed for the safe and pedestrian-oriented transportation circulation needed within the historic core of the town center. It will improve and remediate key locations that have suffered from historic industrialization and provide other support allowed by law for the redevelopment of the town center within the proposed zone. Essentially, the TIRZ will create a predictable public commitment to a sustained long-term economic development plan that is consistent with the town center vision already adopted by the City Council. As proposed, TIRZ number 1 revenues will be generated through the dedication of all eligible city ad valorem tax, all eligible city sales tax, and 50% of eligible county ad valorem tax over the baseline year on properties and tax-paying entities within the proposed zone. Collectively, 100% of city participation in both ad valorem and sales tax, combined with 50% county participation in ad valorem tax, are estimated to yield a cumulative value of $139 million in potential TIRZ number 1 revenues over the 30-year life of the zone. On August 2nd, staff and the consultant team presented an update to the City Council on the preliminary work associated with the creation of TERS number 1. Staff and the consultant team also provided written notice to property owners within the proposed TERS and hosted a public stakeholder meeting on August 11th. Approximately 50 stakeholders attended this meeting. On August 16th, the mayor, staff, and the consultant team presented an update to the County Commissioners Court on the preliminary work associated with the creation of TERS number 1. And in accordance with Chapter 1311 of the Texas Tax Code, staff and the consultant team, in conjunction with the TERS Council Committee, have carried out the following tasks associated with creating TERS number 1. A prepared preliminary project plan, which is Exhibit B of the proposed ordinance. A prepared preliminary plan of finance, which is Exhibit C of the proposed ordinance. Provided written notice to the governing body of all taxing units levying taxes on property within the proposed zone, and obtained waivers from all taxing units within the boundary of the proposed zone. TERS number 1 will be governed by a board of directors, which is proposed to consist of 11 members, including 8 members appointed by the City Council of McKinney and 1 member appointed by each of the participating taxing jurisdictions. However, participating taxing jurisdictions have the right to waive an appointment to the board of directors. The first meeting of the TERS number 1 board of directors is tentatively scheduled for October 19th. The mayor, staff, and the consultant team will also present a subsequent update to the Collin County Commissioners Court in late October or early November.
Are there any questions or comments from the council?
Let me just make a comment here. This is something we've all been working on very hard for several months. And a couple of years ago, the city spent $2 million, $2.2 million, revitalizing our downtown, and we've won lots of accolades for that, what was done there. This will allow us over the next 30 years to expand that same type of facelift, renovation to all the Highway 5 corridors. I think this is a huge thing that we're doing here tonight. $139 million over the next 30 years will transform East McKinney.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I want to thank staff for working under a shortened window of time demands to get this done. And I'll just echo Councilman Day's comments. The city has spent some money on infrastructure downtown with positive results, and I would hope that these positive results would springboard this TIF into fruition of the town center study and all the projects that are designated within the TIF.
Comments?
Is there a board of directors that we're approving, or are you just looking for approval of the idea of a board?
No, it would include the approval of a board, and what we talked about initially was that the initial board of directors, from a timing standpoint, would be the city council, plus we would appoint 1 additional. The recommendation, I believe, would be the chair of P&Z, and we also had a member from the McKinney Airport Development Board on TIF number 2, which we haven't gotten to yet.
But the formal approval and appointment will be on the 5th.
And of course, we have the right to substitute that board at a future date if we so choose, but I think it was important to get that in place in order to stay on the timeline that was prescribed by the council in order to get this to the county. I would say, generally speaking, I felt that when we presented this to the county commissioners, it was met favorably given the fact that we were tying this to public infrastructure improvements, which is consistent with the county commissioners' current policy on participation in tax increment reinvestment zones, and consistent with what they've done in Plano, Frisco, and Allen.
Is it contemplated there'll be a county representative on that board?
Yes.
And they will pick it themselves, or?
Yes. The county, the school district, and the college.
Well, Mr. Ussery and Mr. Day both expressed appreciation to staff for their work, and I echo that, but also, Mayor, I know this has been a council directive, and I know very few have worked harder on this than you and Mr. Day and Mr. Ussery, so I appreciate that, those efforts of each one of you in terms of pressing the timeline and keeping us on a path. I think we met exactly the timeline that we anticipated or that we hoped for back in January, so cause for celebration.
Any other comments from council? Anybody else in the audience like to address this item? Yes, sir. Hudson, how are you?
Fine, how are you, Mr. Mayor?
Good. State your name and address for the record. And
my name is Alonzo Tutson, and I reside here in McKinney, Texas. Again, I'd say good evening to Mr. Mayor and the council. We all can agree that TERS number 1 is a key component to phase 2 of the Town City Center Study Initiative, and it's going to greatly affect District 1. I would like for your consideration 4 areas, please. Number 1, eminent domain. Is it a possibility? Number 2, regentrification. How much? Number 3, if residents are removed because their home is in such ill repair, will they be fairly compensated for relocating? And number 4, what are the plans to keep the existing neighborhoods intact as much as possible? Keeping these 4 items in mind, does the council have a plan to include or engage the residents, more specifically the constituents of District 1, which is Councilman Day's district, and in particular those along the Highway 5 corridor? Considering we are the least affluent of the 4 districts, less than 1% of us vote, and we have some of the hardest tracts to count as far as the U.S. Census in this sector of the county. And we are the district most likely to resist change. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope what I said makes sense to you, Mr. Mayor and council. Just 4 things to consider on our behalf. Thank you.
Absolutely. Anybody else like to address the council? Any other comments or questions from the council? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
And for clarification, with regard to Mr. City Attorney, are we doing a second vote on the board, or what, how are we handling that?
The ordinance creates 7 members already. We'll just need to consider the appointments, really the 1 appointment for the P&Z member at another date.
My question is, do we approve the ordinance, or do we vote on the ordinance first and then do that?
The appointment is not on the agenda tonight.
Oh, it's not on the agenda? Okay, so all we're doing tonight is the ordinance. All right, thank you. That's all I need to know. We have a motion by Councilmember Day, a second by Councilmember Ussery. Please cast your vote. Motion carries.
I would like to also address a couple of things. Mr. Tutson raised a question about how does this affect the neighborhoods. If you look at the Town Center study, it very specifically states that we're going to retain, to the degree possible, all of the neighborhood. We're not going to negatively impact those. The TERS, if you look at how the boundaries are drawn, by law they cannot have more than 10% of their land mass can be residential. 90+% is all commercial. So it's mostly the commercial zoning. It doesn't have an impact to any degree on the residents. This is an economic tool to allow us to build reinvestment, to bring businesses and retail and all the things you see on the streets we have in West McKinney to East McKinney. That's what we're trying to accomplish.
Anybody else have any questions? I have a specific question, and this has been raised by some of the county commissioners. In TERS number 2, there's an inclusion of the property where Encore Wire is, which some of that property obviously is already developed. And can you address the reason for the inclusion of that property.
I'll defer to Mark on that one. He's had more intimate conversations with.
That is probably the largest taxpayer on this side of McKinney, and the county asked questions about the increment that would be created in the future on the Encore project or the business, and we met with the business and we explained to the county the benefits to the TERS of using their increment within this area. And of course, I think the company's response was those roads were important for their business, and the county, from what I understood, since the county participation is related to transportation-related projects, is comfortable with that same analysis. So.
All right, and then there's also an area that, and thank you for that, because that was the question was raised. There's also an area in there that is not included, and it's my understanding that that's a residential area, and you can only have a certain percentage of residential inclusion. Is that correct?
That's the Westmoreland neighborhood, which is essentially south of the Encore corporate headquarters and is residential district.
And again, by statute, you're only allowed a certain percentage of residential development within a district. Is that correct?
10%, yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
Changing every day. We won't get by with those same old ways. Pulling together, we'll make it right. With help from our friends, I know we can fly. There's no place like home. With your family around you, you're never alone. When you know that you love, you don't need to roam. 'Cause there ain't no place like there ain't no place like there's no place like home. I mean, no place, child.